Hi, friends. This is Turn the Page, a Bible study for women. I'm Laura Muse.
Wait, for women, does that mean I'm not allowed to watch this?
Well, I suppose you can listen to it if you want to.
What about other men? Can they watch it?
If they want.
Okay,
That's
cool.
okay. Okay, so Bible study for women and men who want to join in, if they're good. Each week I will be releasing a Bible story study and also talking about different topics that go along with it. And Jesus is at the center of every Bible story, and this week's is no exception. We're going to be looking at 2 healings that Jesus did in the Gospels. That of Jairus' daughter, and of course, the woman with the flow of blood. And all of this happened in the town in Galilee that Jesus seems to have used as his headquarters, Capernaum. Jairus was a leader in the synagogue. He was a very, very, very important man. He probably would have been respected by a lot of the religious leaders, especially the Pharisees and other leaders in the synagogue. And people probably looked up to him and thought he had a great life. But he had a problem. His little daughter, we're not told her name, was 12 years old. And unfortunately, she had become gravely ill and was now apparently dying. And Jairus knew that he probably had only one chance of saving her. And he knew that Jesus was coming back into Capernaum from a mission trip that he was on. And so he decided to meet Jesus on the beach. And he threw himself at Jesus' feet and begged Jesus to come and heal his little daughter because his little daughter was dying. And Jesus, never ignores us when we call to him. So, of course, Jesus started right off toward Jairus' house. In this picture, you can kind of see the crowd pressed around Jesus and Jairus, and all you can see are their heads poking out. And when you have that many people pressing into you, you can't really move very fast. And while they were moving slowly in this tight crowd, a woman who had had some sort of problem with her reproductive systems, we were just told that she had a flow of blood, decided to try to get to Jesus. At that time, she would have been considered unclean. And what that means is they didn't really have disinfectant in Bible times. So if someone had a communicable disease or could have, they would be shunned from the community. So instead of letting people see her, she crawled through the crowd and very slowly approached Jesus' hem of his garment to reach out and touch it, because she was saying to herself, if I can just reach out and touch the hem of Jesus' garment, I'll be healed. What's interesting is what she would have been reaching out to touch would have been, and I swear this is a word, the tzitzit that would have been hanging from Jesus' garment. So when she touched Jesus' garment, the Bible says she felt herself healed. And she thought she was going to be able to just sneak away and be able to restart her life as a healthy person. But Jesus wasn't going to just let this go. He said, somebody touched me. And his friend said, what do you mean somebody's touching you? The whole crowd is pressing in on you. And he said, somebody touched me. And that's when she knew she was busted. She stood up and she told her story about everything that had happened. She had been sick for 12 years. She had been unclean. She hadn't been able to go to synagogue or be with friends. And she had gone broke with doctors. And she just wanted to be healed. And Jesus smiled and said, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. So she didn't have to be afraid, and she didn't have to sneak around. And this would have healed her life in more ways than one. Now she's healthy and everything, but also she's not unclean. So she can go back to synagogue. She can have friends again. She's gotten her life back. And I'm sure this was wonderful. Well, meanwhile, poor Jairus is waiting there patiently, probably scared to death, wondering what's happening with his daughter, and hoping that they could move a little faster, and getting frustrated with the crowd when one of his servants came and said, "Jairus, don't bother the teacher. Your daughter has died." Jesus probably put his arm around him and said, "Don't be afraid, only believe, and everything will be all right." So they get to Jairus' house, and outside of his house there were people wailing and screaming, playing music. These were mourners that were hired by people by then to kind of set a mourning atmosphere. And here is a picture of what a first century flute might have looked like in Palestine. And Jesus said to these people, "Don't cry, she's not dead, but sleeping." And the mourners and everybody else around the area laughed at Jesus and scorned him, because they said, "What do you mean she's asleep? She's dead. She's not breathing." But of course, to Jesus, death literally is not the end of the world. She is not gone forever. She is asleep. And he knew that she was going to be resurrected. And so he took James, John and Peter and the parents and went into the room. And he sat next to the bed where the little girl lay. And he took her hand and he said, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I say unto you, arise." And her little eyes started to flutter, and she opened up her eyes, and color came back into her cheeks, and she sat up. And she wasn't just alive, she was well again. And so she probably bounced out of bed, and her parents were probably in absolute tears of joy because they had lost their daughter. She had been dead, and now she was alive. And Jesus told them to get her something to eat and not to tell anybody else what he had done, like they could keep that a secret. Now, in our lives, we have a lot of sadness, and there are a lot of things to be afraid of in modern life. But we have to remember that there is a light in our lives, and that is Jesus Christ. And he is there for us, and he will always help us through things. He may not always fix them for us, but he walks through them with us and says, "Don't be afraid. I am with you." And so it's important, when we're going through all of these problems we do in life, to pray and to not be afraid. Your assignment, before I release the next video next week, is to read the story of Jairus and his daughter and the woman with the flow of blood in the Gospels. It's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.